But they know. They're beginning to doubt that he does. Folks, I pulled together during the break here some relevant pages from the first New York Times article on these leaks. Now, remember, the New York Times has a story, and the managing editor talked to the Politico, and they're openly saying that Obama did not leak to them. Honest, I've never seen this before, but they're doing it. Because everybody says, special prosecutor, we've got to get to the bottom of these leaks. This is huge stuff. This is really detailed, damaging things. Obama doesn't care about that. Trust me. But traditional Washington, this is a bad thing. This is unacceptable. And all of this is to make Obama look macho, make him look big, tough, make him look like he really cares about the country and so forth. And mission accomplished in that sense. But now that people are calling for special prosecutor, Obama didn't count on that. There's not going to be any special prosecutor. So the New York Times out protecting him. Hey, we didn't get our information from Obama. You believe that? Normally, we're not going to tell you diddly squat about our sources. So we went back. I looked at this New York Times story on the assassination list, on the kill list. The New York Times article itself says in many places they got their information from current and former regime officials. The article quotes Bill Daley. He's just Obama's former chief of staff. And General Jim Jones, the former national security advisor. The New York Times article quotes those guys. It also quotes Tom Donilon, the current national security advisor. He happened to tell the New York Times that Obama, quote, quite comfortable with the use of force on behalf of the United States, unquote. The current national security guy is quoted in this story as saying, oh, yeah, our guy loves to pull a trigger. Our guy, may as well call him Rambo Kardashian. Not Barack Kardashian, he's Rambo Kardashian. It is totally obvious the administration and people it controls on the outside, former administration people, are the ones feeding info to the New York Times. Let me hear relevant passage. In interviews with the New York Times, 36 of his current and former advisors describe Mr. Obama's evolution since taking on the role. Without precedent in presidential history of personally overseeing the shadow war with al-Qaeda. Okay. Yet the New York Times says, well, Obama didn't leak us any of this stuff. Their own, I'm reading from the story in interviews with the Times, 36 of his current and former advisors described Obama's evolution since taking on the role. Without precedent in presidential history, personally overseeing the shadow war with al-Qaeda. They describe a paradoxical leader who shunned the legislative deal-making required to close Guantanamo Bay, but approves lethal action without hand-wringing. I feel like I need to translate this to make sure you get it. What they're saying here, boy, that Obama guy, he's a paradox. He didn't want to work with Congress to come up with a deal to close Gitmo, but when it comes to pulling the trigger and wiping out these terrorists, lethal action, he does it without even thinking about it. He's Mr. Tough Guy. I'm telling you. That's what they're saying here. Doesn't flinch. This guy, he's got ice water running through his veins. Nickname is Cold Blue Steel. Doesn't need Viagra. Cold Blue Steel. While he was adamant about narrowing the fight and improving relations with the Muslim world, Obama has followed the metastasizing enemy into new and dangerous lands. Yeah, he wanted to make nice with the Islamists. He wanted to make nice with the jihadists. But they rejected that, and so he has followed them wherever they go. He put America first, damn right. When he applies his lawyering skills to counter terrorism, It is usually to enable, not constrain, his ferocious campaign against Al-Qaeda. I am reading to you from the New York Times, who claim that Obama was not the source for any of the leaking. Even when it comes to killing an American cleric in Yemen, a decision Obama told colleagues was an easy one. The level of detail, this is what people in traditional Washington are reading, and they're shocked. This is unprecedented. This is the White House writing public relations releases. This is not strenuous reporting. This is the phone rang. It's Obama on the phone or Bill Daley on the phone. Here's what we want you to write. This is what we're doing. This is laughably shameless. Here's another outtake, or relevant passage, if you will, from the New York Times story. Dennis Blair, the director of national intelligence until he was fired in May of 2010, said the discussions inside the White House of a long-term strategy against al-Qaeda were sidelined by the intense focus on strikes. The steady refrain in the White House was, "This is the only game in town." It reminded me of body counts in Vietnam, said Mr. Blair, a retired admiral who began his Navy service during the war. You know what that means? What that means, the hell with this long-term strategy. Obama rolled up his sleeves. He put on the camo gear. He put on the Kevlar. And this was it. Getting al-Qaeda, it's the only game in town. To hell with Obamacare. To hell with the economy. To heck with it. I am protecting America. That's that paragraph translated. And again, the source is a former director of national intelligence for Obama. But the Times tells us we didn't get this stuff from Obama or the White House. And Obama's, I'm offended. Anyone would think, not in my White House. That's what he said, my White House. Here's another one. It's the same story, relevant passage. William Daley, Mr. Obama's chief of staff in 2011, said the president and his advisors understood that they could not keep adding new names to a kill list from ever lower on the al-Qaeda totem pole. What remains unanswered is how much killing will be enough. Oh, man. We want somebody to protect this country. We've got the guy. Barack Kardashian is on the case. The only question is how much killing will be enough. What do you think they thought the Daily caused when they read this? What do you think Barbara Streisand thought when she read this? She probably didn't. They all claim they do, though. Another passage. The president's directive reinforced the need for caution, counterterrorism officials said, but they did not significantly change the program. In part, that's because, quote, the protection of innocent life was always a critical consideration, said Michael Hayden, the last CIA director under President Bush. But, writes the Times, and listen to this, it is also because Mr. Obama embraced a disputed method for counting civilian casualties that did little to box him in. In effect, it counts all military-age males in a strike zone as combatants. According to several administration officials, unless there is explicit intelligence posthumously proving them innocent. That's not, my buddy Andy McCarthy. This is one of his many areas of expertise. He writes about this. He says Obama's profiling Muslim men. This is profiling Muslims. Obama has simply granted to himself, here, folks, the right to wipe out all al-Qaeda Muslim men, if they're military age 18 or over, if they're male and they're 18 and they're Muslim, he can wipe them out. If they're in a strike zone, doesn't care how they're dressed, doesn't care, they are subject to death. He doesn't allow our soldiers this. He doesn't allow combat troops this latitude, but for him, the kill list, piece of cake. So Obama's profiling Muslim men. Now, to go to these links, and B, we assume they went to these links. This could just be a bunch of mishmash. We don't really know how much of this happened. We know that a couple sheiks blown away by a drone, but that's not the point. Again, the point is, oh, you think he's a Muslim, huh? Oh, you think he doesn't really care about America, huh? You think he's a soft wuss liberal, huh? This New York Times story is supposed to counter all that. And the detail is what everybody's looking at here. So, my God, where'd they get this? Somebody, as I say, this is all coming from either the circle or former members of the circle. And this is not leaks. Folks, this is not leaks. This is public relations. This is PR. And there's much more. I mean, I just scratched the surface. Then there's also the story on the other aspect of this, Stuxnet, the New York Times story on that, relevant passages from that. Let me give you one of those before we go to the break. At a tense meeting in the White House Situation Room within days of the worm's escape, that's the hack, Stuxnet, the computer virus known as the worm. At a tense meeting in the White House Situation Room within days of the worm's escape, Mr. Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, and the director of CIA at the time, Leon Panetta, considered whether America's most ambitious attempt to slow the progress of Iran's nuclear efforts had been fatally compromised. Mr. Obama asked, "Should we shut this thing down?" That quote from Obama, "Should we shut this thing down?" in the New York Times is attributed to members of the president's national security team who were in the room. So the Times is quoting Obama from members of his national security team who were in the room leaking. The Times is telling us their source, president's national security team in the room, and they're giving him quotes. Giving the Times quotes. While the Times is denying it, I guess they lied to their own story. And Obama says he's offended that anybody would say the leaks came out of his White House.